listeners, aka fellow randoms, welcome to this, my our sixth episode. This is a collective process. You're in on it too. Our seventh episode, I should say, of What's Your Random Podcast. My name's Kev Duffy, and over the course of my conversation with my guest today, I will discover and celebrate their independent creativity from the inception of their idea to the practicalities and process of bringing it into being as a creative work of art. First and foremost, thank you for joining me. You listening is helping us grow. So please continue to listen. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, whatever podcast catcher you use, as well as on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, also please rate us on iTunes and leave some comments here and there, because that certainly helps us to grow. In that same vein of thought, we are curious about our audience and how you happened upon us. So do you know me personally? Do you know my guest today or a previous guest? Or did you just happen upon the podcast randomly, as it were, and stick around to enjoy the show? Let us know by hollering at us on Twitter and or Instagram at What's Your Random. Finally, after the show today, as with my previous two episodes, I'm going to stick around to debrief, talk about the key takeaways from the conversation I had, as well as a little bit of self-evaluation, thinking about ways that I could improve my performance as a host and how I can improve the show and the production of it in general. So stick around for that. Now, without further ado, my guest today is a well-established and successful documentary, how do we say that word? Documentary filmmaker, documentarian, Zach Weddington. He is well known for his awesome documentary, Viva Amiga, the story of a beautiful machine, a documentary film by Zach Weddington. It's not just a beautiful machine. The documentary itself is a beautiful film, and it recaps a history that may have otherwise been lost, and its documentary's already smiled upon, and I think its importance as a time capsule is just going to grow with time. But we're not here today to talk about that. We're talking about his new documentary series, Arcade Dreams, the definitive arcade documentary series. Travel through time to discover the secret history of arcade games, the people, the places, and the stories behind a century of gaming. That's the tagline, that's the project, and it is an ambitious project to look at such a long history. So Zach and I dove in to exactly how he's approaching this, what the funds he's trying to raise on Kickstarter are going to be used for, and the story dive in a little bit into the story he wants to tell and how you go about producing and directing something that is so encompassing of a really deep and rich history. I don't want to say too much more here because the conversation itself was fantastic. So join me in welcoming my guest today, Zach Weddington. Enjoy the rant. Yeah, it's been similar for me. I'm not super used to being in front of the camera or on the spot for interviews because this is a new venture for me. But I missed long-form conversation specifically about creativity and people's projects and their passions. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it, and I'll hopefully slowly improve, and just go with that mindset. So here I am, and here we are. Welcome to What's Your Random. My guest today is Zach Weddington, and he is currently working on and promoting his Kickstarter for Arcade Dreams. Zach, welcome to the podcast. And we could keep shooting the breeze and the shit about anything and everything. And cool. At whatever point you feel comfortable, you could introduce your project.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, might as well start it now. Yeah, it's nice to be here. I'm glad you found me. I guess I'll start off with a question like, how did you hear about the project and how did you find me?
I found you via Kickstarter. I was kind of poking around and saw your awesome logo, which I think was the first thing that caught my attention. I clicked on through and was really, people say they're blown away, but I was pretty blown away by how immersed I was in your trailer for the project. I'm not super steeped into video games, especially now, but in general, the nostalgia that you reference and that you are looking at through the lens and through your documentary, and then the way that you articulated that in the trailer. I felt like I learned a lot just in the 5 minutes of the trailer. So I'm looking forward to
Wow.
the complete project. Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah. Well, you hit on two or three things there that I had been concerned with. First off, everybody listening, yeah, it's a documentary series about 100 years of arcade history, right? And so we're looking at games and how they evolved over time, and arcades, how they've evolved over time. A lot of people don't realize how far arcade history goes back. It really gets into like a turn of the century type of thing. And we kind of pick it up early 20th century. The roots of arcades go back to things like speakeasies and bars where there were these kind of, I guess they would say, like a proto arcade machines, right? Like they originally began as machines, to win like little prizes and stuff. Like, these early arcade machines, they look kind of like slot machines. And, you might win a cigar or something, from the store or the bar that you're in. And so, yeah, I mean, it goes all the way through that, through pinball, this electromechanical 50s and 60s stuff that is just really cool, all the way to the 80s golden age and beyond, even up to the arcades of today, because they're still around.
Yeah, and the end of your trailer says the golden age is something like the best era in arcading is about to begin.
Yeah, it's wild. Just to give you an idea of the roller coaster ride that we're going through, right? Today, Sega announced that they are getting out of the arcade business.
Aren't they the arcade masters?
They really are. I mean, that's one thing, people think of Sega, and of course they think of Sonic and Genesis and, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the truth is, yeah, Sega stands for service games, right? It's not a Japanese word. It's a contraction, and it means military service games. It started out actually as an American company, that was making games for the military service members who were stationed there after World War II.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I mean, some real history there, and so I mean, talk about.
So
I mean, this
simulation, like war simulation type.
No, just for entertainment, for their leisure time.
Okay.
Like getting those guys pinball machines, getting those guys, arcade machines to play. While they're having their R&R. And yeah, I mean, this is amazing. So today they announced that, and it just so happened that IGN, which is a really huge games website for people that don't know, we actually had a video that was featured on IGN a week or so ago, in tandem with the Kickstarter launch. And then when they made this announcement today, IGN used our video again because our video deals with the history of Sega. I mean, we had no idea this was coming. And then today I wake up, it's like, what? We're on IGN again. And the reason is Sega's going out of business for that. It's just like, what? You can't make this up.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So pretty opportune timing for the loss of a arcade giant, which is unfortunate.
I'm telling you, it's
mixed emotions.
Mm-hmm. It's just, and it's one of the things I hope to talk about in this conversation, kind of like, how do creatives, choose their topics? You know what I mean? And it's like, man, I wish I could figure out how to get more great ideas. But the funny thing is, when you get one, like, you just know it, and as I get older, it gets easy. Cause like, of course, growing up wanting to be a filmmaker, I had all kinds of ideas for movies, and, I couldn't do any of them because they'd be really expensive and complicated. And like, I didn't know how, right. And like, now that I'm older, it's like, I started to get ideas. So like, well, you could actually maybe do that, And then you find one you think that you can actually do and is good. It's kind of like, yeah, we got to go with it, And I had a feeling that, arcades were going to go, we're in the middle of this retro wave. Basically what's happening is that people my age, in their 40s and stuff, like they're the baby boomers of today, right? And so they're really into nostalgia. Like, you hit this age and you feel like, your life's passing before your eyes. And so you start to go back to some of your childhood favorites that you forgot about, So I kind of anticipated that wave coming. And then I just didn't realize, like, whoa, we're going to end up making this film right as like a major change in the arcade industry is happening. Like I couldn't have predicted it. When I started the film, it looked like arcades are really on the upswing because they're starting to pop up. A lot of people are getting tired of just always playing games at home, and they're looking for something social to do with their families a lot. Touch.
Yeah.
And and then boom, COVID. I mean, it's like, what?
Well, also Sega hasn't been known for their best business decisions, right? So maybe this is them.
Yeah.
And so I lived in Japan for a while, 2 years total. And
oh my God,
I remember
really?
walking down the street and seeing a big Sega sign on a building. Like, what the hell is that? And realizing that it's an arcade. So you're helping me, I realized it already, but you're filling in some of the history of the dots that I just connected by virtue of that experience. But in general, it seems like, Japanese companies are a little bit more conservative, and sometimes they aren't able to take a loss in the short term for what's on the horizon in the midterm or long term. So
yeah,
it would be a shame if they start. It would be a shame if arcading makes a comeback for them, but at the same time, we hope that it does, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's so many ways to look at that. I think a lot of, what changed with games, basically since probably the late 90s, early 2000s is that, the companies that make games and make game systems, they're really multinationals now. It's not like, Sony is a Japanese company. It's really not, and if you look at what they've done with the PlayStation and stuff, they've followed kind of like a Hollywood model. And a lot of the games that come out for that are basically like blockbuster movies that are international efforts, right? That take, hundreds of developers and millions of dollars. And that's a different world, than the game, Sega was playing in the 90s, which I think, they weren't ready for that next generation of how games were going to be, and so they of course they got out of the console business. And then, I guess we're focusing a lot on their arcade business, and then their, being a software company too, making new Sega games and licensing.
Yeah. So seeing as that's really new news and that was going to be their core business, what are they planning on doing from here on out? If they don't have a console and they don't have arcades, what do they have?
Just the game. Yeah. Just their games available on other systems, right?
Yeah. And
like they still put out new games and like, yeah, you can get it for, Xbox or whatever. It's strange. Yeah, it's strange.
Buy Retro Sonic 5 times on each system that you buy over the course of every year.
I don't play a lot of that stuff. Like I'm a retro gamer, and I still like arcades. Like there's going to arcades today, there's always something new and crazy to see. And then I really enjoyed this comeback of retro gaming with these barcades.
Right. Yeah, we have one in downtown Raleigh.
Oh yeah, what's it called?
I don't know, and I haven't been there, so shame on me.
That's okay. Yeah, well, maybe I'll come down there and we'll go check it out. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I would love to host and hang. In my defense, I did move down here right before the pandemic hit, so I didn't have much of an opportunity to explore. But I think they're open.
Yeah, just I wanted to ask you, what actually brought you down there again? For our listeners, it turns out that I grew up in Raleigh, and now you live there. So what brought you there?
So I was living in the Northeast in New York, where I was born and raised, and I was looking to switch it up for a while. And then a company I got a job with and I was working remotely for was located down here in
Oh,
the
okay.
Raleigh-Durham area. So I was coming down pretty frequently for business trips and whatnot, and became familiar with the area. And I was like, I can't really think of a better place to move on the East Coast than this place I've become familiar with. So
Yeah.
yeah, I pulled the trigger and pretty happy I did.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah, I love it there. I love it there. I like to visit a lot. Can't wait to be back. I even tried to move back once, but that was another crazy time. It was like September 11th. And
oh
I
wow.
went down there without a job, just thinking it would be easy to get one. And like jobs in my business are so hard to get. Like you have to really fight. And yeah, I started doing freelance work down there. I'm a video producer for everyone listening. I've basically done video my whole life. So here I am, still going on it. And I started to get freelance work down there. September 11th, had to leave.
Oh boy.
And then actually, then I wound up getting my first job in television back in Pennsylvania, where I went back to in public TV. So that was probably my first job when I was like 22. That was like really in the business. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you might, if you want to move back down here, you might look at what the options are, because the area is growing so quickly, and
Yeah.
a lot of tech and a lot of companies who are, and I think it depends on what they do with some of the restrictions that, Hollywood was coming to these areas in the Sun Belt, because filming here was cheaper and there were some incentives to come, but then they
Uh-huh.
put some legislation through that was not, what's the word, for transgender bathrooms and things like that
Yeah.
Hollywood,
Yeah. Oh, I knew that was happening in Georgia. Did that happen in North Carolina too?
I believe that it did, and I believe
Oh,
it
please.
impacted
Yeah.
their ability to attract Hollywood productions and movie productions. But
Wow.
we'll see
Yeah, I
what the
don't know.
future holds. I mean, I found out from a guy I ran into down here randomly, and I didn't fact check it, so people listening could fact check it,
Yeah.
that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first movie, when they escaped New York City and are training, that was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Uh-huh. Lots of stuff is shot there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Dawson's Creek, the long running drama on TV.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's happening
it's
place.
funny.
You might have opportunity yet.
We'll see. And a lot of it's kind of hinging on how this Arcade Dreams series goes. If it goes really well for me, I'd really like to just continue career making my own stuff. I've worked for 20 some years already, up and down the TV business and, corporate stuff and marketing stuff. It's just, yeah, if I can find a way to just do this, so far it's starting to look like it will work. I'd rather just do that. Just do my own thing. And then I can live anywhere. Really ultimately what I'd like to be able to do is just travel around,
Yeah,
probably, when things come back, I like to turn this into an Airbnb where I live and just, yeah, kind of be on the road filmmaking. A lot of people are doing it. We've got this young lady, her name is Emoto Arcade. And we actually we got her on board to help us produce some content for Arcade Dreams, and that's what she does. She's just kind of like a filmmaker on the road, and brings a lot of cool gear with her, and yeah, so she captured some cool arcade stuff for us in the Atlanta area when she was there, and she did some intros and some gameplay stuff for us, and then that's the video that wound up on IGN.
yeah, and I think I
Uh,
saw on the Kickstarter page too a little spot by her. I don't know if
yeah,
that was something
same
she did
video.
previously, or
Yeah,
okay,
no, that's
cool.
the same video. Yeah, we've been getting a lot of mileage out of that video. This is exciting and super stressful times for me. I go and look at the views on IGN, like we're almost, I'm not used to getting such crazy hits fast. Of course, you put it on IGN, we got like 40,000, within like just a few days or whatever. And then when I post that video on my Facebook, it's up in the tens of thousands.
Wow,
It's
yeah.
something that lots of people are seeing. I knew there was a market for this, and I knew that the timing would be good. I'm amazed I've had to work so hard to get funding for it, but it's just, that's an art form. And really hope, the one person that's missing on my team, I think, is really just a good kind of sales and networking person to get us funding. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that I'm gonna have to work a little harder to find. But you know, yeah, well, I launched my own business a few years ago, and we've just kind of been transitioning towards a more documentary content agency versus what we were doing, which is like more commercial and more, like corporate type work. So it's all
Yeah.
been a long process to kind of get where I'm at. And yeah, like it's exciting, you know?
Well, and I think, the type of content that companies produce and put out there is evolving and is going to continue to evolve. So even if
Yeah.
not just for your own projects, you could definitely use what you've done personally and say, hey, we could do this to tell a story about your company. And I
Yeah.
think, maybe I imagine for me, if I was in your position, that would be interesting, even though it's not my own content or my
Yeah,
own
yeah, yeah.
seed of an
We've gotten
idea.
some of that kind of one project that we got, that was in that vein that actually overlaps with Arcade Dreams. We got hired by a guy that we've been working with. His name is Ricky Sky, and he handled an auction of one of the rarest arcade machines in the world. It's called the Moldorama machine, and it's from the '60s, and you put a quarter in, and it makes you a plastic toy. Like using
Wow.
hot liquid plastic, right? Like
Wow.
in front of your eyes. Like, yeah, it's got these molds and this injector, and it comes together, and you get like a Mickey Mouse figurine or a Donald Duck. And so we got hired to make a video about that to promote this auction. Yeah, this guy down actually in Georgia, he collected like 30 or so of these machines that were in various conditions. Some of them were just junk, and where it was able to restore them and then sell them for like $15,000-$20,000 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
and
would
then, I
almost
mean, there's people
imagine
out there that
because,
buy that. I mean, it's like what there's people are like, I gotta have a Moldorama. A lot of them are from the Chicagoland area, and so they saw them at zoos and stuff when they were growing up, and so now
right.
they're
What
got
is
them.
the
You didn't
most,
spend on something like that? It's wild.
yeah, what is the most random, to borrow the title of the show, arcade machine that you have like encountered? The one that just struck you as, man,
Wow.
this is weird. Is that it?
Oh man, that's definitely one of them. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to pick one. One of them, I'm the Sega guy, so one of them I really like is called Sega Jumbo, and I've got some video of it that we're going to be releasing. I'm realizing, wow, yeah, now's the time to release this stuff. Sega Jumbo, you control this elephant, right? That has a trunk that has like a vacuum attached to it that
Oh, there's a
blows
little clip of
air.
that in your trailer, right?
Yeah, right. The Sega Jumbo. And so like, yeah, you gotta control this, this vacuum thing that's like blowing air, and you're suspending this little ball in the air, and you gotta catch it in a basket. Like I was just so charmed with it when I first saw it. It's just like something from another era. Like you're looking at like 1960s or 70s, I believe, Japan, you know, which is just that's a time period and place that I'm really into. Like such a cool retro style, and it makes it has this old fashioned like 8-track tape that's playing in it. It really blew me away, and I was like, God, just think, they were making this stuff before they did
Yeah.
you look at some of the video games that came after, well, they look so boring in comparison to this crazy contraption. So,
Right. But people
yeah.
were enthralled with anything that was digital and,
Hmm.
based on code, right? Because that was
Yeah.
so new.
And of course, yeah, I'm part of the video generation. I grew up loving video games, loving computer graphics. And now they're just so prevalent that they don't have that magic for me anymore as much.
Right.
So I
When
love.
I was watching your trailer, I was really struck, and it kind of reminded me, you showed that the elephant game, and then you showed some older retro games, and I was like, yeah, when I was a kid and I was playing games, it was full immersion. Like
Yeah.
regardless of what was going on, my mom
Oh
yelling
my
at me to
God.
come to dinner.
Yeah.
I had the blinders on, and I was fully immersed into the game and living as the character in the box.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that's definitely what do you think is about games gives them that appeal?
What makes them feel immersive?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I think it's just, yeah, there's a lot of wizardry going on in just about any game, you know. Like if you're talking about cool animation and graphics and sound, there's, you know, people love great stories. A lot of games have amazing stories. And then I don't know, the challenge factor, you know,
Yeah. I
whatever
imagine
that
too,
update.
like the if you think about the marketing, and there was a recently Toys That Made Us on Netflix, and or
Yeah,
the Masters of the Universe documentary. I think it was a regular documentary, now that I think about it. But anyway, the idea that kids take agency and are in control of something when they're always
yeah,
usually being told what to do. Now they're actually in the game
yeah, that's
controlling their
definitely true.
environment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. For me, it was like so much about the animation and graphics, though. You know, like that's just the personal way I came at it. You know, a lot of the time I spent in arcades when I was younger, like I'd go in there even if I didn't have any money, just because I really love to see, you know, like these feats of engineering and graphics programming, especially in the 80s as you got more into the 80s. I mean, they just started going insane with the graphics. Sega especially, a lot of other ones too, where the yeah, like every few months it was something that you hadn't seen before.
And
And
like upping the ante with immersion
yeah,
too,
like
like
constantly.
seat shaking and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like, wow, when's it gonna end? You know, and like and then yeah, but when you get into the 90s, you know, the a lot of that consoles were becoming bigger, and I think a lot of that kind of just being able to keep topping yourself kind of wore off. So yeah, it was a strange time there, you know, mid to late 90s where yeah, arcades were dying. And I remember I was living in Philadelphia at the time. You know, there was an arcade on South Street, which is a very kind of famous place for tourism and stuff like that. You know, biting the dust. Like, you know, I go in there like every week or two, and like things were more broken and
And
less machine. You're
yeah,
like, yeah, you can see it coming. There it goes. And so that's definitely part of the arcade dream stories. It really is this constant boom and bust cycle that arcades and there, you know, video game industry has followed. I feel like it's been more boom than bust, you know, since the late 90s in terms of consoles. But then arcades, yeah, they've kept evolving. They go through a boom and bust, but then also, you know, there's a lot of new styles and concepts they keep coming up with. What really happened to arcades in a larger respect in the United States is they became these family entertainment centers, you know, where it's like you don't just have an arcade, you've got pool tables and you've got, you know, um, all kinds of stuff for adults to do as well. You know, so it's like a family
right.
place where everybody can do something. It just happens to have an arcade too. You know,
And
that's really
or
kind of where
appended to like a bowling alley or a Chuck E. Cheese
yeah,
or
yeah,
stuff
that's
like
huge. And
that.
I mean, I saw in the news today they just opened up another, you know, it's called Round One. It's made by Namco. They
Hmm.
just opened up another location in New Jersey, like right now, you know, in the
I
heart
didn't
of go. Like I
realize there
saw
was
that
a first one.
Sega gets out the business and these guys open a new location. Yeah, like I didn't know there was a whole chain. There's one in Chicagoland area that we've been going to. You know, Chicago's a big area for us in terms of where a lot of the stuff is that we're going to be shooting and have shot. And so we knew about that one, but I didn't even realize there was one in Philly. They've got one downtown, and it's opened up. You know, fairly recently. It's
I didn't know there were any in the US. In Japan, you could go there to do their logo is like a bowling pin. And then you could go in there,
yeah,
you could hit
they've
balls in a
got like
batting cage, you could go
20
to the
some
arcade.
locations or something. Yeah. So the thing is, what happens with arcades, a lot of people just, they may grow out of them and it just, maybe they don't take their family there, but yep, they've, you know, they'll always be around in some form. What I really hope doesn't go away is these barcades. Man, they're just so fun. You know, it's like, it's the closest thing to like the arcades of my childhood that I can think of. Plus you can drink. Like, yeah.
It's like hitting the nostalgia point, right?
Yeah, yeah, and people, you know, like we filmed at, you know, a location for the chain called Barcade here in Philly last winter, and you know, like after the shooting was over, I really got to see like the camaraderie. You know, this one guy came in, everybody knew him. You know, it was like Norm, and yeah, like we grabbed him and actually got some footage of him and I playing like Mortal Kombat and stuff.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, it's weird. One of the things I think that I didn't realize, and a lot of people maybe don't think of, when you make a documentary, you actually wind up becoming part of the story. Especially if what I do for my documentaries is I always choose a topic that there's a built-in community around. That way, I have built-in viewers, and
Right.
like, and through that, like, I really become part of the story. You
Because
know,
you become immersed in the community
I
that's
become in the
pre-existing.
community. Yeah, yeah, and like so, it's just a kind of rewind on some things here. This is my second major film. And my first one was called Viva Amiga: The Story of a Beautiful Machine, and it's about computers, right? It's about computers in the 1980s, and so we tell a story. Most people think of computers as always like this Mac versus PC kind of like simple story, and you've got Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and maybe something Linux, and that's kind of it. But like, there was a major competitor to those computers back in the 80s made by Commodore, who were famous for the Commodore 64, the most popular home computer in the early 1980s, like just millions and millions sold.
And to put
So
it in
this,
perspective, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, it
yeah.
means the processing was like a Nintendo 64. Is there some?
Would you say, yeah, what would you compare it to?
I
Yeah,
don't know.
it almost like,
I'm not a computer
yeah,
guy,
no,
but
no, I can highlight that. Well, like, I guess the graphics were almost as good as maybe the original Nintendo Entertainment System, like kind of in that realm. Like, they were pretty good, and it was also a computer that you could program and do all kinds of other stuff with. So I mean, it was a huge hit for them. And then they followed up with this computer called the Amiga, which was like 10 years ahead of its time. Like, it was something I've heard, many stories, like, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were actually kind of afraid of this thing because it was way more advanced in terms of graphics and sound and lots of other that kind of stuff than their systems, right? And costs way
at
less
the time. Wow.
at the time. Yeah. So I mean, this thing was a big deal. It wasn't a huge deal in America. It was giant in Europe. It was like a household name. Everybody just loved these Amigas because it was an awesome computer with really sophisticated. Now I'm telling you, like, I got my start in the in this, video and animation business on an Amiga because it was a home computer, in the late 1980s that you could do some really amazing stuff with. I'm talking real 3D animations, and all kinds of, musicians got their start on it, making really incredible music. It was just like an absolute revolution. And it stayed around for a few years, and then Commodore went out of business, and then there became this cult around this Amiga computer that I didn't know existed. Once the Amiga went away, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just give computers a break for a while. At that time, like, computers weren't really necessary in the 90s for doing film and video. We were still in a VHS tape world,
Right.
and working on this old kind of video technology that people don't really know about anymore to make videos. So I didn't even really need them. And then by the time, the late 90s came, Apple got in the game with a digital video, type of system for the Mac, and, other computers had systems too. And then, yeah, now we're in the digital world. So anyway, the whole point was, yeah, I became a part of this Amiga community that I didn't know existed. And lots of people rallied around our film, as kind of like, yeah, we get to tell the story, to the world of what actually happened here, because history, and, I think it's even in the documentary, history is really written by the winners. And so, like, a lot of the truth of how things were at a particular time just gets written out of the story because it's not easy to explain.
Right. And it
Yeah.
becomes obsolete because they don't have a contemporary flag carrying machine to
Yeah.
say, hey, these that in the past that was our history, that's our origin, and here we are today. You don't have a flag bearer like that.
Yeah. Just a
So
different world.
do you miss VHS editing and more?
I actually do. Yeah, it's what you would call linear editing. So it's not necessarily just VHS, but yeah, like, the way that you did a lot of editing back then was using, multiple industrial, tape machines, right? With an edit controller with knobs and dials and buttons and stuff. And yeah, it was a very kind of like, I'd compare it to almost being more like a DJ. And that, like you're queuing stuff up and, like there's a real sense of like rhythm to it. It's got a real time feel. Yeah, I really enjoyed that about the linear editing. And there's something that's kind of gotten lost in my work because I don't edit that way. I'm using Adobe Premiere now, just like anybody else pretty much. And yeah, like someday I'd like to maybe get a system together because there are ways to get that real time feel back. But I live in the real world, and there's so many drawbacks too. Like
Real time, meaning you're kind of like
well, there were
like
drawbacks
a
to that thing because
maestro or like working in an orchestra as it's playing and
yeah, I
recording
mean,
at the
like it
same
would be
time.
possible to build a system where I get that feel again and not have to deal with the drawbacks. But yeah,
What
it's
does
nice
that
to be
do
able
to
to
the
open up a laptop and just continue working if you want. It's weird.
Yeah, what does that do to the creative process? And how do you think some of your, and you could get as technical as you want in answering this question, but how do you think your projects would feel any different if they were, or your current style would be affected?
Oh man, there's so many like pluses and minuses to it. For example, like if you're really doing like linear editing with like tape-based media, you can't remove a shot later. You can only kind of cover over it. So if you really had something like, let's say I put a like a 20-second sound bite in an edited piece, and later I just want to remove that, well, you actually would have to re-edit everything you did from that point forward.
Right.
So so obviously you don't want to do that. So it's one of those things, like a lot of your decisions that you make, like you're more committed to them. Like you can't
There's like a ripple effect.
yeah, like you can't just hit undo. Like now I can hit
Yeah.
undo. Like I got like 100 some levels of undo. I can just
Control Z is
there's no undo. So it's like having real time feel versus no undo. Like it's cool. I like that I kind of came in this. I almost feel like I came up in this generation of old world versus new. Yeah, learning the old school TV stuff. I mean, in film school we were shooting on film, not video for the most part of it. So like that's like a whole other can of worms. Like what you shoot on film, first of all, like most of the time there's no real like monitor to look at, so you can't really see if you're messing up the shot using the kind of cameras we were doing. Like takes a little bit of faith, and then yeah, like having to be super careful, like loading this film in darkroom and stuff. I mean, yeah, it's like primitive world. So I caught that. Like I was living in that world and like the video world at the same time. Is yeah.
Yeah. But that must have
Wow.
also carried over into the digital space and like given you some skills that
I
I'm
hope so.
missing and other
Like I told
people.
myself that like it would have been cool to get my hands on even more advanced tools back in college. Like a lot of the like those kind of skills I wound up having to teach myself. Because even in school, like I mean, just keeping it real, like by the time I got to school, like I was already doing stuff that was a lot more advanced than stuff that like seniors were doing, and partly
Right.
it was because I had this Amiga, and like I was already into all this other kinds of like image creation stuff that
And
people
was that mostly animation or what were you doing on the
a lot
Amiga?
of animation stuff, and then yeah, just but like in the video world too, like it was great. People take for granted like what it's like to be able to composite a shot, which would be like lay some graphics over top of a video image. Like
Right.
that was something that was really hard to do up until when computers got involved. Like it took special hardware, and like the Amiga had this like $200 thing that you could buy where like, oh, now you can overlay stuff and combine and make special effects shots, titles. So
Yeah,
it
different
was
layers
cool.
moving
Like
around.
I mean, like yeah, I mean, for me, like the way that kids get obsessed with games, like I was obsessed with any kind of like animation and like media creation stuff as a kid, and it's like it's the really the only thing I've done my whole life. I don't think I'll ever do anything else for a job. Yeah.
Is there anything outside of video that you're that you did in the past, music creation or something like that, and anything that you're still
Yeah.
doing today that's that's outside of the realm of this
Oh
random
man.
that we've been talking about?
Well, that's funny. Yeah, like I consider myself like a frustrated music producer. Like I know what sounds good. My own stuff doesn't sound very good. Like when I make my own music, like it never works out. But like if I work with musicians and or like edit their stuff, then yeah, like one thing I'm really good at, I think, is like, you say like music and audio editing. Like I'm kind of a composer in that way. If you watch my films, like I'm always trying to achieve this kind of synthesis between the image and the sound, and like that takes a lot of kind of editing and composing. So
Right.
that's something really good. Like, yeah, one thing I really want to do for Arcade Dreams is I'm looking for a musician that is like close by or reasonable drive, and has like the time to devote to just kind of like getting in their studio and experimenting. I've had times in the past where I had a musician friend in, a really dope studio with all kind of like turntables and keyboards and drums and stuff, and like we would go in there and just jam out. Like we'd hit record and just play with all this stuff, right? And then you go back later and you realize like, oh, that was a really awesome like drum loop, that we can take and repeat. And this was a little sound effect that we made that we didn't even know that we did. And then I would take that stuff and edit it into my videos. So I'm looking for something like that.
To collaborate
Yeah, just to and have
in
some
the real
fun,
world.
Yeah, have some fun,
Person
and
to
then
person.
wind up with something that we can use in this film, because I think like the topic lends itself to some really cool, sound work.
Right. And I
We
think,
got
I mean,
arcades, video
the
games,
sound and the visuals you've
yeah,
already like kind of explored a bit in the I'm just going to keep going back to the trailer because I was
yeah.
so
Well,
impressed
thanks.
by
You know
it.
what? And that's the reason I make the trailer. I make the trailer to put a vision in your head of what the film's going to be.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like it works. Yeah, I even went back to like the original trailer I made for Viva Amiga, like the not final one, like but the first one. I was like, whoa, the film actually came out like that.
Oh,
So
cool.
I make it for myself. Like whenever I'm sitting at the computer, I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? Like I forget, like like what am I working on again? I'll just like go and watch about. Oh yeah, right. Like we're talking about the history of this, and then gets
So
me
how
back on
much
track.
yeah, how much of that is in editing is planned ahead of time and how much of it is discovery through the process, relating it
Wow.
back to what your comment right now about music creation and just going in the studio and jamming out. How much of your editing choices are jamming out with the footage? You have two clips in front of you and you say, how can I transition? How can I put these two together? Do I go back and
Yeah.
forth a few times, or,
I wish I
what?
could figure out maybe what the percentage is. First of all, like I always like before I really get serious about something, like there's some kind of structure. I'm very into the structure of things, because when you lay out a rough skeleton or structure, that's actually when you can get really creative. Like one of my heroes, I guess you'd say, is Jack White. Jack White puts a lot of limitations on his creative process, right? By saying like, we're only going to use, we're going to have very limited instruments. We're going to use, really old school recording techniques, not computers, and so he puts these limitations in place for himself. And then, it forces a lot of creativity to him, and, kind of keeps him on track, right? So just by laying out I lay out some kind of skeleton. It's kind of like come up with an intro, come with an outro, figure out maybe what goes in the beginning, and then yeah, from there you can kind of jam out, right? Another thing I do is I'm a kind of like a music video type person. So like I'll just take a song I really like and throw it in the timeline, and just like go and start grabbing handfuls of clips, throwing them in there without really looking too hard about what I'm doing, and then just seeing how it comes out. And like
Yeah.
I used to think, like I remember when I first started really doing this like a few years ago, like at first I thought I was wasting my time, because like I'd wind up with something that maybe doesn't really, like it's not that impressive or doesn't make a lot of sense. But then I realized, like if you just go back and tweak it some more, and then look at the skeleton that you've laid out, that'll inform some of the content that you want to weave into that. And then it winds up becoming a great kind of like a 3-minute chunk of content. you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm really inspired by, I like a lot of visceral stuff. I like to make a music video out of it and then kind of reconstruct it into content. Yeah. Like, I saw with Viva Miga, like it's a documentary, but it's also kind of like an album. It's got like 12 or 13 tracks, right? Each track's about 4 minutes, between 4 and 7. And yeah, you put them all together and it makes like an album, so
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah so Arcade Dreams is going to be kind of like that, but just see, one thing that people don't really know about, like, making a film, and why it can be hard to make like a good film, is they get lost because they think of it as this huge thing and you kind of don't know where to start. Whereas I realized that if you can start breaking things down into just little 3-minute chunks, you'd see that the film is actually composed of, lots of 3-minute chunks,
Right,
that,
right. Yeah,
that, that
tackle
are
it.
that are woven into a larger thing. And when I realized that, it became a lot easier to make films.
Yeah, I mean, in some of the things that I do, sometimes get overwhelmed because the idea seems bigger than me, and where do I start? And oh my God.
Yeah.
But if you, like you said, if you kind of create some confinement and some
Yeah,
boundaries, then
exactly. It
you
works.
stick within those borders,
There's
you'll
all
come
those
out with
there's all those
something.
books for writers, like how to write a screenplay in 30 days. Like, I picked up one of those once, and one of the things I learned is like, well, just write the first and the last page, and
Yep.
that's all you got to do.
Right.
Yeah, and then just fill it in, because like you need to know like where the thing is going. So, like, I don't always know the end when I start, but I try to figure it out pretty quick. Like, at the end of this, what's it going to look like? And that way you got something to work towards. Like,
Right.
I feel like I've learned these basic tricks, a lot of people probably take for granted, but it helped me, in my,
Storytelling wise, or
yeah, storytelling wise, and any kind of, media creation wise, like, just figure out the beginning and the end. Like, that actually helped me in my 20s. I just got really jaded, like, with the prospects of ever being a filmmaker. Like, I was happy to just have jobs. I loved that first shot, after I left the public TV station, I got a job making commercials all day, and it was the funnest thing. I was in New Mexico working with these crazy people, just making wacky, low budget commercials all day, and I really love that. But during that time, I really had just given up on ever making my own films. And, like, through the rest of my 20s, I didn't really make any of my own stuff. And, yeah, I guess, when I got into my 30s, I realized, like, oh, you should try again,
was there
and don't put a
something
lot of pressure to make
specific?
something. Don't put pressure on yourself to make something great. Just make something. And
Was there
that's what I
something
did.
specific that catalyzed that kind of ambition, the return of
Yeah, there was actually, there was a film that came out called Chasing Ghosts Beyond the Arcade. And everybody's probably heard of The King of Kong. That's a real famous documentary
right,
that's
yeah.
got like Billy Mitchell and stuff. Like, well, there was another film that came out at the same time, that actually was a Sundance film called Chasing Ghosts Beyond the Arcade. And I want to say, like, it was kind of the first of a new generation of documentary films that we started seeing, where it was produced with, inexpensive HD, video technology. And then also, one thing that made it really cool is it had computer animation in it. And I watched the film on Showtime, and I just thought it was awesome. It was one of the first of this kind of like retro type of topics that have become so popular now. I mean, hello, I'm doing it again, arcades. But I saw that and I realized, like, what, I should probably try to make a documentary, because I realized that, well, I work for Comcast and I've got a multi-million-dollar studio that I actually work in, that sits there at night. I started putting all these like pieces together. I was like, oh, like, maybe I can get this started. I didn't even have a camera. So I started sneaking people into the Comcast studios, during our off hours, and filming it there. I had the permission, but like, not, just enough permission to make it happen. And we started, I started shooting interviews and getting some B-roll. And then, I, just kind of kept developing it, getting some funding. And it took me a long time to finish Viva Amiga. I'd really treated it like a hobby. Because I was working like 60 hours a week at Comcast.
Wow. How long was that?
What? How long I worked there?
How long was the project?
Viva Amiga? We're not going to talk about it. It was a long time. But here's the thing. I kept in touch with the community the whole time I was working on it. And I'd be like, okay, guys, if we just have a little bit more of this, it's going to be, and a lot of people encourage me. They're like, you know what? We want it to be great. And we want it to be something that we all can be really proud of. And so, I even came, we had an angel investor that I love. His name is Trevor Dickinson. He's part of the Amiga community. He came in with some finishing funds, because there's hard costs just, so everyone knows, I can't do everything myself. I have to pay people to do all this fancy stuff. And so, we were able to get, the finishing touches to make it really professional. And then, because it looked so strong, we were able to get a distribution deal for it that included a Hulu premiere.
Wow.
I really just thought this was going to be something that we would just burn some DVDs, and it would be like a fan thing and some people would know about it. But no, we had an amazing, release for it. It included a DVD deal, some film festivals, and, number one spots on iTunes, around the world. I was like, what? It's like one of those, it's like, I was like, first thing you do when you wake up and get your head together is check the phone. It's like, whoa, we're getting all these number ones, around the world. And so that kind of thing, made it worth the time and trouble and just all the misery. I want to tell anyone out there, making documentaries is absolutely a miserable experience. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it unless you just can't not do it, which is, I guess, the deal with me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you came back to do more. And hey,
it's
regardless of however long it took you to make.
It's finally I understand why people are artists. I don't know. I never really identified as an artist. All right. First of all, I hate that term in a way because it comes with all this baggage, that I think comes from people who are not artists, frankly. And, it maybe implies that you think you're special or something. And I just never felt that way. A very process oriented person. I just want to make stuff that's cool that I like, and I never really understood why someone's compelled to make paintings or something. Cause me, it seems really a waste of time. And so I could see how people probably feel the same way about my thing, but it's just you can't not do it. Right. There's something in there.
I think that's the random. That's you're in a lot of ways tapping into the essence of why I started this podcast and why I invited you on to chat today.
Thanks.
Which is why I have a big smile on my face, because you keep hitting the
man.
notes.
Yeah, I feel I'm older now. I actually have some stuff to talk about. It was that was a problem in my 20s. It's I want to be a filmmaker. It was well, what do you have to say? I'm I don't have anything to say.
But you put in time to bring however long it took you. You had a successful project. That
I've always been jealous of people that are these Mavericks. They're the Spielbergs of the world or whatever. They're 10 years old and they have this amazing story they want to tell everybody. I never felt that way. I just want to make robots. That.
But you had you had the Viva Amiga story.
Yeah, but that was until I was in my 30s.
Okay.
It took a while.
Right.
I have other stories too. I do intend. I've got one other thing I want to tell any creatives is please, for the love of God, even if you just email it to yourself, especially if you use an email like Gmail or whatever. If you have an idea for a movie that you want to make, just get it down. Even if you just email yourself the idea. Better maybe to have something like Evernote or whatever, where you can store ideas, but it doesn't even have to be that complicated. Just keep saving your ideas for projects that you want to do, because when I found out, I'll go and look at stuff that I did save, many years ago as ideas. I'm holy shit, I can use that idea right now in Arcade Dreams. I can adapt that idea, or maybe that'll be the follow-up to Arcade Dreams.
Yeah.
I do want to make an animated spectacle kind of in the, almost like a Pixar type of thing that's got more of an edge to it. That's like an animated, I guess you would say like an animated rock and roll musical. If I had the
Sounds awesome.
money,
Sounds awesome to
I
me.
know, right? I know it is awesome. I've been developing it for like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, just kind
Right.
of every once in a while. And like, I realized like, oh, back in the day, I would have never even bothered to say that paper. Like, but now I just keep, going
Right.
back
But
to it.
over 7 or 8 years,
You
little
realize,
ideas
oh, like,
accumulate, and then
I
you
know.
can create the bookend of the start of the movie and the end of the movie and plug in
Yeah.
all these ideas that you've accumulated and emailed to yourself.
For anyone
I'm a
that's
big
interested in
proponent of
film,
that as well.
here's another piece of advice for anyone that is interested in being a filmmaker. Like, one of the most important things to actually have is a next idea, because what happens, when you release a film is that's when you get the attention to maybe, make some more stuff. And
Right.
yeah, like if you have ideas ready to go, like it's a good way to just keep going. I guess that's what I did, like I guess when I was wrapping up Viva Amiga, I realized that we had to go and do something about games if we wanted to make more films. And like, we transition to games. You know what I mean? Like, have some ideas ready to go so that you have some, something to
And
transition
what
to.
was there a decent chunk of time in between Viva Amiga and when you could call a definitive end to that project for yourself and the beginning of planning for this project, or was there overlap?
Yeah, I guess I just had in my brain. So Viva Amiga came out January 2017. And I think I already had the idea in my head. We're going to follow this up with something about games. And so, yeah, that year I actually, did the film festival stuff with Viva Amiga. We did like 10 shows and, like watched the numbers come, back from our distributor and see how well we're doing, and did all that kind of stuff through that year. And then, yeah, I started working on this idea for a documentary about Sega. Which, ironically, like, you can see it all kind of overlaps and twists. I want to do a documentary about Sega, and I even have like a teaser trailer that I made for that, which
Is
like
that
hardly,
online anywhere?
I don't know.
Hiding?
It's hiding. Yeah. Because as I was making that, I'm like, wait, you're stupid, because the problem with a documentary that deals with, like, first of all, it's a narrow topic. Okay. So like, you're automatically reducing, your potential audience by making it very specific about Sega. I know there's a great story there, and then another thing that you have to think about, like, I'm just a little guy. If Sega were to decide that they don't like what I'm doing or how I'm portraying the company, all they have to do is send me a letter and my whole project is dead.
Right.
Like, I could never fight that battle. And so I realized that, yeah, like one of the great things about, the projects that I work on that makes me be able to sleep at night is that I know that pretty much anything in it is interchangeable. So let's say that maybe Sega doesn't want me talking about their history. Well, guess what? We're just going to pivot over to all the other companies, and then
Right.
it's versus what, getting shut down, you know.
Yeah.
I have a documentary I want to make about Apple and Steve Jobs. I still think I can make it, but I know, if they caught wind and they're like not down with it, they could probably just stop me.
Shut you
Now
down.
legally, it's not supposed to work that way, but practically, I think it often does.
Right. That's unfortunate. So you
Yeah.
went from very narrow Sega to extremely
Yeah.
broad. I would love to hear
It's weird,
about.
isn't it?
I think it's
I don't know.
awesome.
How did I go from that? I'm probably just talking things over with my producer I work with. His name is Rob Hart. And, we run the commercial side of our business called Rocksteady Media together. And then we work on the films together. And yeah, man, we're kind of like, we kind of see ourselves like, like a production team, like almost like just kind of like a idea generating team. It's cool. And so we get to a point where, like, was that your idea or mine? Like, we don't even know anymore. That's
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
thing I wanted in my whole life. I assumed in art school that I was going to meet somebody, like a lot of my friends did, who was like an amazing creative partner, that they would just work with. Because I saw my friends did, like, they wound up working with their college friends and starting businesses together. And like, that just didn't happen for me. Like I spent a lot of time with some really cool people, in film school. And like none of their careers really went anywhere. And like, we ended up not really working together. And like, I kind of became like the only one of my little crew that's actually in the business.
Oh,
So,
really?
it was really lonely for me up until just the past few years. Like, whoa, I got somebody that I can work on stuff with,
And where did you meet him? Like, how did you network in that way?
We actually, came through Viva Amiga. Yeah. And, I realized that he lived close by, and we could just, hook up. He actually helped me finish Viva Amiga. Like, I guess I was about 80%.
So through that community?
No, not
specifically,
through
or
that community.
okay.
More just like, just caught wind of it somehow. Yeah. We're not even sure at this point, but.
And when you, so you've shot a decent amount for Arcade Dreams already, right?
Yeah, something like 40%.
Okay.
Maybe 40. Could be. Here's the thing, like, it expands and contracts based on the backing that we get, so the more funding we get, the longer we'll make it,
And it's not a feature length film. It's a series.
It's a series. Right? Yeah. On Kickstarter, we have it portrayed right now. And like, this is the minimum that we're going to give is 3 1-hour parts with some mini docs, right? So you get 3 1-hour chunks, and then these mini docs at the minimum. We think it deserves to be like a 5-part series, but we might actually wind up producing that for the Kickstarter people. We're not telling them that, but it might be a 5-parter anyway, because that's what we think. We think it would work better as 5 40-something minute episodes versus 3 1 hours. But due to the nature of documentaries, you can expand and contract according to budget. And that's what we'll be doing. I also think that we'll probably offer a feature length version. So you could have this series, and then there'll be a cut down, probably 1 hour, 45-minute version that we would like to have available for, festivals. And then we have a concept for a cool kind of, a small movie theater release that we can do.
Awesome.
We want to have, it's getting a little dry mouth here. One thing about independent films is you don't really make a lot of money by doing a theatrical release. And I think that's only going to get worse. But you can make a little money if you turn it into more of an event.
Right.
And so we'd like to do, like a 12-date tour where we show the theatrical version, and then we have a music aspect, right? We have like a chiptune artist, or, someone doing like video game music. Yeah. At one of these arcade bars, right? So you go and see the movie, and then there's an after party, where you get to hear some cool music and play games, have some drinks, and, maybe get to meet cast members, stuff like that. Yeah. That's our current plan. And it'll be
that
fun.
Sounds awesome.
I'll go back and listen to this a couple of years and see like how it actually turned out, like there's so much up to fate.
That's the fun thing about these time capsules of recorded communication.
I love them. Yeah.
Stuff.
As you can see, I actually really enjoy doing these, like, especially once I, get in the groove of it.
Yeah. I'm having a great time. And if you do need to grab some more
water.
You're a
good interviewer. Yeah. So let's talk about you for a second. So I know that you've got an interest in filmmaking, right? You said you worked on a film in the past. Like, you don't have to go into specifics, but I'm kind of curious, what your interest is there.
Yeah. So I do a good amount of editing now, and I have fun with that. I use Final Cut
Video
Pro.
Editing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I would call myself, very amateurish, self-taught, but I have fun with it. And that's why I was really interested in your kind of workflow and how much of it is impromptu creativity. But I had a film in 2011-ish that I wrote, directed, acted in. It was a guerrilla indie kind of hero flick, and finally released that in like 2018 to some festivals and stuff. And I'm due to put it out just on YouTube for anybody who's listening to
get it out there, man.
Enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's impressive. That's what you do,
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. And then I think to your point about you should always have a couple of ideas in the pipeline. I didn't really have a second idea. So I had this experience of completing a film and I learned so much because it was my first real film and creative endeavor in audiovisual spaces.
that's
And
awesome.
I didn't have another script that I was ready to film, and didn't, parlay that experience into a second film. But working on some stuff now, so hopefully in the next year or two, I'll have some short stuff to put on YouTube to
That's
see if
cool.
people are interested. Yeah, yeah,
Awesome, dude. Yeah, well, look forward to checking it out. Yeah, like
yeah,
one thing I want to say about myself is that I'm extremely opinionated, but I'm also kind of non-judgmental. Like a lot of people, I think, like um, you know, I see myself as a highly refined sense of taste. That doesn't mean my taste is good. It just means it's my taste. This is an argument I'm
that's
always having with people. Like people attach so much of their worth, I think, into like what they like, right?
yeah,
So if you
yeah,
don't like something that another person likes, like, like you think like, oh, they're making a judgment on me. And like, no, like that. I think that's one of the best things I learned in art school is to like really just try to detach yourself from, your own work and detach people from their work and just, try to focus on, what's good about things, what works, you know.
right.
Like we get so worried about something, whether or not something is good. I had this writing teacher, and like I don't consider myself a writer, but we would turn in these writing assignments and set rather than kind of put like a blanket, qualitative judgment on it, like this is a good story or this is a good essay. Like he would pick out the things about it that were good, you know, and not try to pass judgment on it and say, you know what, this is a good part. Why don't you mine that a little bit
Right,
more?
right. Yeah.
Focus more on that, and maybe this part's not so good, and maybe want to play that down. And I mean, that was world changing for me because I was like, we're always trying to get something that is eventually good, and if
Right.
and if you can focus on the parts that are good and get people's opinions on them, like now we live in a world where it's so easy to get reviews on your work. All you have to do is post on YouTube and get a million opinions, like
Right.
like I do that with my own stuff. I've got kind of like a dev team of about 100 people that are on a Facebook group with me that are like in some way associated with the documentary. And so like, I'll stay up, and work on something that's like a rough idea, throw it up to the people, and then, just gauge their reactions. And first of all, like, do you think this works? And then like, what do you like about it and not? And, that gets me towards something that's good,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's this is a clip of the podcast that might be cut out and exist on its own, because what you said there is I think really helpful. Because
Thanks, man. Yeah.
myself, I would admit, and part of me doing the podcast itself is to kind of overcome that fear of rejection and fear of
Oh man. Yeah.
criticism, and criticizing yourself, being your own worst critic and stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
It's terrible. I mean, like
Um,
like the thing is like, yeah, like my bar for quality is so high that like I almost never meet it. And in my professional career, it's been very rare that I've ever met my own standard of quality because like, first of all, I like almost never have budgets. You know what I mean?
so what's the emotional, what's your
Yeah.
emotional ride as you work on something so hard, then you watch it and maybe it's not up to your standard, and then but you have to release it. Like, what do you do
It just
and how do you
depends. Like,
feel?
yeah, like, I haven't done enough of my own films to say like, too much about what that's like, but just even on my own commercial work, like, um, a lot of times it's really just, bouncing it off my partner, and trying to figure out, like I'm usually the one that's just like, all right, let's just get it out. Like he's the one that makes me go back and be like, no, you know what? You're going to have to fix this edit. You're going to have to fix this audio. You're going to have to cut this part, even though you spent 2 weeks editing it. That's one of the crazy things about being a filmmaker. It's just like that's why I talk about it's so important to detach yourself from the work, because if you don't do that, because the work matters, not you. And so you might have spent like a long time on this part that you loved, but if you watch it back and it slows the film down, well, you have to cut it out.
Right. Kill your babies. That's
You
the
have to, yeah.
phrase, right?
It's
Yeah.
ruthless. I mean, it is a ruthless type of thing for me,
Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah,
I agree. And I struggled with that for sure. I
yeah.
also struggled with editing and looking at the same, I mean, from a 3-minute clip down to just one cut, watching these little parts
Oh,
so
yeah.
many times over and over again that you lose fresh eyes and ears
Oh,
for it.
yeah. Oh, I
And
know.
so
It's the
when you're
worst.
editing, do you say, okay, this 3-minute clip, I'm putting it away for a week or 2 days, or
Yeah.
what? Do you
Yeah.
have a specific time frame that you like to put things on the shelf for before you revisit when you're in the
No,
middle of the project?
it's really organic, and like I'll just follow my mood, Yeah, I think one of the smartest things that I've started doing is, like I said, creating these music videos and just kind of like little scratch stuff, where I'm bored, there's something to work on right now. Let's just mess around with that. And then, yeah, it'll sit in the project, anywhere from a day to weeks or months. And, I'll crack it back open and be like, oh, wow, like I didn't realize this can go here, if we just maybe cut like 1/3 of it out or something,
And
very
when you say
organic
music
process.
video, is it something that you work to the music and orchestrate around the
Yeah.
music, but then remove the music later, or is it a
Yeah,
transition
so,
that
yeah,
includes the
exactly.
music?
Sometimes remove the music later, sometimes replace the music, or sometimes like it's a hybrid of things like, yeah, maybe after this call, just show you some, I'll show you some of
Yeah,
what I'm talking about. Like, it's almost like a sketch for mood, kind of think of it as like a dream of a sequence is kind of what I like to do. So yeah, we'll just throw random sound bites in there, just clips, and, just trying to get a vibe,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and that's,
Establish the tone.
yeah, and get to know the footage.
Right, right.
I think one of the hardest things is like, right now I realize like I have a lot of footage that I don't really know intimately. So one of the first things that we're doing once the Kickstarter is over is that we have some people that are going to help organize the project in a really intelligent way so that we know where everything is. And it's, it's got the metadata that we need to be able to search for stuff instead of hunt for it. And,
Yeah.
right now, like I'm doing a lot of hunting, man, and be like, oh God, we shot this 2 years ago. I know we got this one shot of this one game, instead of going through all that, we're just going to have it. Yeah.
So just have people
searchable.
there typing tags,
Mm-hmm.
attaching those tags
Yeah.
to different clips.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another.
I've started networking. I network with like some really professional people lately. And, we've got a guy that's up in New York, that is really a fan of the project. And yeah, just be able to give us like a reasonable consultant fee, price to get the project,
Yeah.
how it's really supposed to be done.
Is there any way to do that efficiently without like watching through all of the footage?
Well,
But
yeah,
in
you
terms
have,
of
well,
cataloging and meta tagging.
yeah, I mean, you're going to have to watch probably all the footage at some point, but like just being able to have starting points, because like we have a lot, like being able to find stuff quickly and, yeah, that type of thing is going to help a lot because, yeah, I mean, it's hours and hours. And what's so weird is that like you'll capture stuff and, like, since I'm such a perfectionist, a lot of times after we do a shoot, like I'm almost always disappointed. Like I'm almost never happy because I'm like, oh, we didn't get this, and we didn't get this, And then you go back and look at it like, some weeks or months later, you're like, oh, wait, maybe we didn't get that, but we got this instead. And you thought we didn't get that, but you actually got it really well. It just
Right.
maybe wasn't said in a way that you really, because like, when I'm on set, like it's all I can do, like, especially if this crew is small, just to be, on my game to make sure that we get, the bare minimum things done right. It's lit right. It sounds right.
Right. Yeah.
Like we're on point, the guy's loosened up and, being honest, it's like, I'm worried about that stuff. Sometimes I can't even hear what he's saying because like, I'm so worried about this other stuff. Yeah. And so, that's why at least on these shoots, I've been able to have someone there, Rob, my producer, who is, at least, able to record in his brain what people are talking about and know that we're getting it and be able to stop things if we're not. But you
Right.
really just
Because,
never know until you watch it back.
yeah. And
Sometimes you think stuff looks great, but you realize like, like his mood is wrong, or like her, she didn't really say what you thought she said. I mean, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
You
And you
never know until you look
imagined,
at it back. Yeah, but
right.
one
Especially
thing
in
I'm happy about.
documentaries, I
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah. So I don't know. This is going well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like actually interesting, don't you think?
Huh?
This
What
is
we're
like pretty
talking
interesting.
about?
Yeah, like this is
I
gonna be a
love
good
it.
one, I think.
This
Oh,
is going to
cool.
be a great one.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Yeah,
I
this
want
is
to make sure it's a
exactly,
big deal.
this is hitting the essence of what I want to do and talk about process
Hey,
and all these
oh,
these
I'm
little
so happy. Yeah, that's why I agreed
tidbits
to
in
do
between.
it. Like, hey, like I was so flattered that you approached me. Like,
Oh, I was flattered that you agreed to talk
oh
to me.
yeah.
Yeah, you're going to be the fifth
Well, it's
guest
something
on the
different
podcast.
because here's one thing. Like, like it's just, and I thought of this, after we got in touch. Like, so much of what I'm doing with these other podcasts and streams is like I'm always in hype mode. I'm like, don't forget, we're gonna have like a collector's token that you get, if you back the Kickstarter, or like, we've got Eugene Jarvis. He's an amazing, like a legend of the industry, and it's always this. Yeah, try to get people excited. Like, it's nice to actually talk about like what I care about, which really isn't any of that stuff. It's like, well, how's it going to be really cool to watch, And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's probably like, what I care most about my films is it fun, or is it boring?
Right,
I
yeah.
hate boring stuff, I
And
really do.
yeah, yeah,
Even though
you're
I
obviously
like a lot of things people would consider boring, but like I hate being bored myself, you know?
right. And you're hyper focused, I think, on the presentation, and so far, the mood board of the trailer that you put out is strikes a chord, and that's why it's gaining such traction. And by the way,
Yeah.
feel free to do hype here and there, as it feels natural to you, and if you want to, because I'm
Oh
open
yeah.
to
Well, I
that
think
as
everybody
well.
should go find us on Kickstarter. Actually,
Absolutely.
go to arcadedocumentary.com. Of course, you can see the trailer there. There's links to the Kickstarter. But yeah, go and look, through the other sections on the website where you can see the team that's involved, like it's I'm working with this guy. His name is Bill Winters. We call him Amiga Bill. He's somebody that I met from doing my first film, Viva Amiga.
And
And
he's the
like,
DP. He's
yeah, he's the
director of
DP. I
photography.
mean, this guy is just one of those incredible like image making people, like he's so highly technical yet also creative and just extremely cool. So I met him because I guess I was somewhere around the 75% complete, mark for Viva Amiga. But I still needed some more B-roll. There was a lot of sections I had where I just really felt instead of watching the person talk at you, why not just show it? But the B-roll wasn't really easy to get. I was out of money. And I got approached by Amiga Bill, and he's like, oh, I wish I'd heard about this project earlier. I would have loved to be involved. Just wanted to say, please keep in touch. And, I can't wait to see when it's done. And I was like, well, we're not done, like we need these shots. And he was like, oh, great. Well, I'll just go get them for you. So like I made him a shot list, and he, spent a couple days getting some really great B-roll, like really high quality stuff. The guys that, he works for Netflix and, all kinds of celebrities and big presentations. Like
Wow.
the last few really major documentaries about Netflix, Bill's shot it. Like Ep.7, and he did the one about the serial killer. I always get him mixed up. Ted Bundy, I think. Yeah, they did some Ted Bundy ones. And so I met this guy. Here's the funny thing. I had no idea. He didn't tell me he was really like an industry professional camera guy. Like I
Right.
thought it was just an Amiga fan that happened to have some nice cameras, and like, maybe did this for fun, or he did, some things in video. And like, I kind of like, I didn't meet him in person. We did it all through the email. But after talking to him for like a year or two, I was like, oh my God, this guy's like, like a
Legit,
real
legit.
legit guy. And so, yeah, like, he, based on the success we have with Viva Amiga, he was all on board for Arcade Dreams. So yeah, find out about the team, and yeah, also find out about some of the people that are going to be featured, They're people that are industry legends, yes, and have really cool stories to tell. We're going to be covering a lot of history, but we're also going to be covering in a way that there's a lot of human stories, people's personal struggles, what they went through to achieve a dream. One thing I learned from a producer that I worked with for about 10 or 15 years, his name is Dan Satarsky. He's a real kind of like TV storytelling guy. And like he just always kind of, whatever videos we worked on together, he always focused on like, well, why should you care? Why should you care? And often the reason that you care is because there's somebody's story, of something they had to overcome to, get to a better place in life. And so I'm always trying to mine for that stuff, human drama.
Yeah.
Underneath it all, underneath the technology, underneath the games, what's it really about? It's about people and what they did,
And when it comes to nostalgia, when it comes to nostalgia, you could put yourself in the boots of the people who are talking about the technology that you experienced and relate your experiences to however they experienced it.
We've got this guy, Ed Fries. He invented the Xbox. He's going to be in our film talking about what it was like to invent the Xbox. Well, of course, he is an arcade guy, and he, was in arcades as a kid. And, as soon as he could, he started programming his own video games on home computers, and he went through the ranks, at Microsoft until he became the guy that invented the Xbox. And so, wow, what a great interview that's going to be, right?
For sure.
It's just a 360 view of games,
So when you went into the project, and we were talking about before kind of having this skeleton to build upon, how structured was the kind of hypothesis of this history over the course of 100 years? And, how much of it was predetermined and how much of it is discovery as you're filming and going through it?
Yeah, I guess we kind of talked about it earlier. It's maybe, I could never put a percentage, but it's somewhere half and half, maybe. Okay. Like we know that the structure is chronological, but the human stories are ones that we discover along the way.
Got it.
Like there's only so much information that's available online, and it's often a lot about facts. It's wild. We kicked off the series with a shoot in Las Vegas. It was a multi-million-dollar, largest in history auction of coin-op games. You know what I mean? And this is all games before video. So we knew this guy was a collector, and then he had assembled this amazing collection, restored a lot of games, and was going to auction them off to the world. We didn't know until we interviewed him that he had also been in the arcade business. He never even thought to mention that. And so,
that's a turn of events.
I know, that's kind of important. Like that's a funny thing is like people's eye is always on something else. Like he would never even think that we would care about that. He thinks that we care about him because he has all these games, which we do. But we also really care about the fact that, this is the guy that would go into shopping malls, at 2 a.m. and go and empty all of these machines and get the quarters out.
Oh,
right. You never think of that. And he started, spinning off into stories like, he's always worried that he's going to get robbed because he's moving all this cash, there was often no security around. And he was trying to get all these quarters, giant bags of quarters into a van. So that by the time it's 4 a.m., he might, get a little farther north in California and be able to service those games. So a lot of discovery, and that's the kind of stuff it comes up during the interview. And I'm like, wait, what? And you're so taken by surprise that it's not until you go look at the footage later, but realize oh, wow, there's a whole other story here.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Human stories.
You said that you had so much footage as you're going through and kind of putting skin on the skeleton. I guess what percentage of that is you remember something that you filmed and you're like, this is where this absolutely fits in. And then how do you go about, even if you have the metadata and the tags on the footage that you could say, I think, something outdoors with a person talking about this sort of game would fit the mood I'm trying to achieve here, and look up the metadata for that. Like, I'm just like still trying to wrap my brain around, even with metadata, how do you comb through what you have to throw it on the skeleton? I know that's not a great question, but it's that kind of
Well,
general.
like I haven't worked with this metadata system yet. Like this will be my first time. Okay. Like it's been by memory, pretty much everything I've produced up until this point. Like we didn't have metadata tags.
Okay.
So it's been a lot of memory stuff. And like with a documentary, what you really want to do is focus on content first. So you get basically what I would call like the A track or the vocal track, where it's people talking about things. Maybe there's some voiceover, and that's all it is. And then you go back and try to put visuals on top of that. And then you start cutting it down. You realize like, okay, this is enough of somebody talking. We want to put, maybe a montage here, that I'll go and dig up one of the montages I did when I was bored and drop that in there.
Cool.
And then, like Rob's really the one, that it's got this incredible, I don't know what we call that kind of memory where you just remember what people have said. Mm-hmm. Like, he's kind of got that in his memory banks where he's like, oh yeah, like, remember when he talked about this? I'm like, no, but he'll go and dig it up, and then boom, there's the right soundbite that goes there, that we didn't even maybe know we had. But,
and what's that collaboration look like? Yeah. What's that collaboration look like? Are you guys meeting on a scheduled frequency to kind of have those conversations and dig into his memory?
It's pretty organic. Like we'll go back and look at rough cuts, and like Rob will be there with a notepad being like, oh yeah, like we've got him saying this better in another take, or we do actually have a shot of that somewhere, and I try to help as much as I can. Rob's kind of like, I'm the one that goes out and like paints in broad swaths. You know what I mean? So I'll make the structure. I'll make the outline. And then you got to have somebody that's detail oriented, I think, to help you fill in the blanks, because I'm not super detail oriented. I'm just enough to get by. But having somebody that's detail oriented, that's what a producer is. And that's something that I didn't even learn in film school. A producer is a person that's very detail oriented and like can think of logical steps, that can be put in place to making something happen. Yeah. Producers are life-changing,
Yeah. And getting this far into the podcast before I asked is kind of silly, but what is your title for the film, and like what hats do you actually wear? Yeah. And what does that entail? Because I mean, it seems like it's your baby, right?
Yeah. So I'm the director.
Okay.
Yeah. And like what I learned, through my experience in the film world is like those titles are kind of elastic. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm the director, but I have also worn a lot of other hats,
Are you going to be editing it too?
Yeah. I do a lot of the editing, and Rob and I do the editing together. Like and then, but that's the thing. Like, there's not one editor. A lot of the editing is going to be subcontracted, to other people that are going to do, some of that, be assistant editors, right? And help us organize the footage and in such a way that it'd make it easier for us. And sometimes, on some projects, that means that they actually do editing. They'll put together sequences, and then, it would be my job to take their sequences and refine them. So, like, for example, I know people that work over at NFL Films, and they make a lot of documentaries. A lot of them are about football. A lot of them are about other things, too. They do a lot of work that's not about football. And so, they've got editors over there that are, working according to the producer's notes, right? Working according to some script and doing a lot of editing. But then there's a whole nother editor that comes along and, might make major changes, cut things, and then do what's called a fine cut. So as much fine cutting as I can do on this project, I would like to, because it's not really it shouldn't be my job, putting together so much of the nuts and bolts content. We like to outsource as much of that so I can get in there and make it sweet. I'm very good editor at making things that just kind of have like, a real like rhythm and flow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want the whole thing to flow. If you watch my documentaries, like it's all about the flow, like I'm a big hip hop fan, and one thing I love is just something that flows, right?
Yeah.
Like a Jay-Z kind of flow. I always wanted to have that where it seems effortless, but in fact, there's a lot of work put into it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. And I notice even when I'm editing, like attention to the cuts with audio, and there's a real beat. You can't hear the beat necessarily in a audio in a sense of, metronome,
Yeah.
but
But there's a rhythm in the way people
beat and a
talk.
rhythm to it. Yeah.
It's a lot about how people talk. And so like, yeah, one thing that I think has made me better in my editing is I start listening to dialogue as music. I listen a lot to the rhythm of their voice, and, don't try to focus on content, but then also try to focus on that flow, and that informs a lot of my editing decisions. If you go and look at a lot of documentaries, you realize that there was no reason to have this person talking about something for 30 seconds when they actually got their point across in maybe 10.
Right. And
So
that's part of killing your babies, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, exactly. Like you think that maybe that was important, but if you look back, maybe not. Like there was a tangent in there that basically detracts from what they were trying to say.
Yeah. And that's true of video editing, just as it's true of, writing a college paper.
Yeah.
Right. Like I relate a lot of my editing and
It's
stuff.
the same. It's very
back
related.
to
Yeah.
writing an essay in school, and
Writers, musicians, and filmmakers, it's really very related disciplines, I would say. And of course, it takes all those people to make a movie.
Right. Yeah.
But at the end, like I said, I see it like an album, it's gotta have a flow, it's gotta have a message, it's gotta have a beginning and end,
Yeah. Without those things, what is it?
I mean, who cares? It's just you entertaining yourself.
Yeah. Are you also doing some of one of the things I was really impressed with in the trailer is the titling and the graphic effects. And like, let me pull up my notes here, because there was a note in the copy of, you guys said we want to, something about wanting to put people inside the games through the course of the documentary, right? And like I felt that when I was watching the trailer, and part of that was the graphics and the transitions and the titling, and how dense is the actual finished product going to be with those sorts of elements, do you think?
That's a good, that's a combination of budget and time. Those are the constraints that we have to work in. And I think trailer sets the standard of quality. In my dreams, I want the film to be a lot like the trailer. Of course it won't, you know what I mean? It's not going to be this, this onslaught all the time. It'll have, periods of rest and periods of excitement.
You need time for people to talk in between, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, you know what I mean? Like over here I on my wall, I guess I can't really turn the camera. Like I've got the skeleton of the series over here on my wall.
Is it a postcard or
it's maybe
index card?
Maybe like index cards, right? So I can just go over here and look like, okay, what are we making? I'll send you a picture or something, you could put it in.
That'd be cool.
I can see like I've got these content chunks, and then interwoven from there, I can see like how much content we'll need to go by, and then we're going to go into a montage, right? So here we are in the 70s. We're talking about golden age pinball. We're talking about, the beginnings of video games and stuff. You know what I mean? So we've got a content section about that. And then, after that goes on for a bit, we're going to go into a montage, where you're actually in like a 70s roller rink. You know what I mean? That's one of our holy grails. For the film, is being able to do some of these reenactments where we're going to put you, say, in a rolling rink, a roller skating rink in the 1970s, with cool shots of people skating and the DJ queuing up the tunes, and then you pan over to the video games, which are just the latest thing, imagine video games
bringing you back in time.
Yeah.
Putting you in your old shoes if you were ever lucky enough to experience that setting.
Right? So we kind of have this like concept of a meta narrative, right? So where we're going through different games throughout the ages, and so you kind of every once in a while go back and check in visually, with people that are in arcades, throughout all these different generations. So, maybe early on in the film, like you see a girl, right? That's getting into pinball, as a little kid, and then 45 minutes later, when we're talking about another generation of arcades, like, well, there she is again, and like now she's playing Space Invaders, or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
I love
We're
of
really
those
going
threads.
for cinematic. Yeah, like so basically, like this film is kind of like me inching more towards a like a cinematic style of filmmaking. Like I really have this dream of some kind of a hybrid between a documentary and like a narrative film. And so
this
like,
is
I'm
the
kind
point
of
where I have a question I have to ask you, but
Sure.
you can finish what you were saying.
Yeah, like I kind of want this, career-wise to be a turning point for me, like, and create something that's got a very interesting like hybrid style between a documentary and narrative film.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know how close I'm going to get though. We'll see.
So have you heard the podcast Polybius, the Polybius Conspiracy?
Oh, no. I mean, of course I know about the legend of Polybius or whatever, but there's a podcast, huh?
Listen to the podcast because it's essentially the podcast version of what you're talking about, and it involves the arcade machine.
Wow. Somebody's always onto my game, I swear. It's a hustle, man. Somebody's always onto your game.
But you weren't necessarily going to do Polybius, but they I think they illustrated this kind of semi-documentarian, semi-fictional world that you will do in film someday. Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, no,
it might be an inspiration or a good reference point of.
I'd like to put my own spin on the Polybius thing, like I know angry video game.
Did I spoil it? Was that your project you were envisioning doing?
Well, first of all, I hate covering stuff that other people have already covered.
Right.
That's why it's not a film about Billy Mitchell. I mean, it's hilarious. Like, I announced I'm doing this, and people are like, "Oh yeah, Billy Mitchell going to be in it?" I'm like, haven't we talked enough about him?
Right. There's other history to cover.
Yeah. No, you're right, but he might actually be in it. But if he's in it, there will be a reason. See,
the cliffhangers. You're good at building anticipation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I swear, you have to play this kind of like a psychology game with people. Especially like what I'm considering that I'm doing is I'm kind of making my film like in a public space. Like people are able to follow along with the progress. So therefore, like they're always thinking that what I'm currently presenting is what's going to be the final product, when in fact that's really not true.
You just upped the ante a lot.
Yeah, it's really not true. Like, and I'm telling you, like this stuff plays into so many aspects, right? Like, so I told you earlier about this collector, right? His name is John Torrance. He had the biggest collection of games that he auctioned off. So of course, that was our first shoot. Like I started making trailers and things featuring him. And so like I started sharing it with people that are really hardcore into the like arcade machine collecting world. And they're like, "Oh, we hate John Torrance. Like we think he's a faker. He's not a real collector." And like, "Oh, this movie's going to suck. It's all about John Torrance." I'm like, "No, it's not about John Torrance. It's just the first shoot, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like
100-year history,
about a lot of people." Yeah. And it's all about this one guy from California. I mean, yeah, like it's like doink. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, but that's what you got to do when you kind of have like a community sourced film, which is what we have.
Right.
Like right now, the people who care about this stuff are the ones that are backing us on Kickstarter because they're like, "Oh yeah, this is our story," but like, if you look at the current trailer, a lot of people that are going to be in it are not even featured yet. Why? We haven't shot them. Why? We don't have the money. So that's why we have the Kickstarter.
Right.
But like people don't even travel that far down that road.
And that's amazing.
They're like, "Oh, why?" You know what I mean? Like, well, has this guy in it? I don't see him in the trailer.
Right.
I was like, "Well, it's not the final trailer. It's a teaser."
And the trailer, even if you were limited to what you already shot, the trailer for me was pretty expansive. It was like, wow.
I know, right? It kind of looks like something that's already coming out,
Yeah.
Well, that's not true. We're only halfway done. I mean, yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that drives you crazy, because like I gotta field all these.
It could be. I mean, it's a good thing because it just is a testimony to the quality of what you have already.
Yeah. Of course, and it's easy to pat myself on the back, but like meanwhile, I'm just like, oh, Like, don't you know? Like, it's gonna have all this amazing animation you haven't seen. Like,
Right. Because you don't want people to think that what you have shot already is the extent of what you're shooting. I also listen to some really long form conversational podcasts that are all over the place. And I think
I like
hours for being this long today is, pretty on point and like kind of getting in a good sense of the term, getting into the weeds that I want to get to.
That's cool. See, now I like it. No, that's cool. I consider you a real journalist for that reason because, we're not talking about the superficial stuff, and that's one of the reasons I was really excited to do this podcast because
thank you.
Normally that's all we get to talk about. Like I've been doing streams, with Amiga Bill, and we're on Twitch, and like this guy is like a producer, right? Like his streams are not just somebody sitting there playing games. Like he's got segments, right? It's like we're going to intro with some Amiga demos, and then it kicks into some, awesome Amiga chip tunes, and then we're going to talk about arcade games and like, what were the arcade games like on the Amiga versus the arcade version, and like the whole thing just keeps moving and just like one nonstop kind of like boing, So I'm coming from that over to this where. Yeah, we're actually having like a conversation that's about something.
Do you listen to many podcasts yourself?
Not a lot, but like there's some that I've been listening to for probably about a decade, that I always check in with. And they're mostly NPR stuff, like This American Life. I always love that one. It's one of my favorite radio shows, podcasts. I listened to another one, got to give props to my guys at Sound Opinions. It's a music show. Yeah, music review, the world's only rock and roll talk show, they call it. Of course, they cover lots of genres. But that's always been a favorite of mine because, like, I think my other career probably would have been in the music business if I was just a little bit more driven that way. And like, that's a great show because they really talk about, all kind of aspects of the music business, getting the artist's perspective, right? Not just talking about the hype and, what's the latest thing they get inside the artist process. And then, like fans, submit their own questions. And that's always been a favorite. And then there's another one that's music related. It's called something about like the Billboard 100, and this guy breaks down like, top songs of different points in time and why they were popular.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. I mean, I love music stuff. Yeah. Those are probably the main three, I would say.
Yeah. I think since I started my professional career, there's less and just adulting and whatnot, there's less opportunity to go to my friend's house and just lay around watching TV, shooting the shit, having random conversation. And so when I listen to a long form podcast, which is what I want this to be, is like not a replacement because nothing could replace that, but a little bit of a stand-in for just shooting the shit, exploring ideas, going down little rabbit holes. And, I think there's a lot to be gained from that sort of exercise, if it is an exercise. Yeah. So that's why
there's some song. Yeah. Like I was saying, listen to your episodes. Like there's some song that you kick off with, I think in the first episode, you put this little theme song up front. I really like that. And then the second episode, like it seemed like you'd save that for later. Or...
Yeah.
Themes are so important.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that as a theme. I'm trying to pull it up now because I think his name is Milo. He's a producer who just put up a ton of music from his library on YouTube, the audio library on creative license, like common license, so that you could use it totally freely. And I'll surf around their YouTube's library sometimes for a long time, and I'll just pull out a couple of songs that I like for different projects. And a good portion of the time, there's a song by this guy in there. And if I'm misquoting his name, I apologize, and I will correct it at the end of the show once we hang up and I look it up. But it kind of had that vibe, and even the logo I put it together one Saturday morning into the afternoon, and it was just fooling around with different elements and how they come together, and no particular reason behind the colors I use. Just I like purple, so I was
all our stuff's all purple too. Yeah, it got a bit of a retro vibe going there. Yeah,
and then I don't know.
Well, it's better than a lot of other stuff I've seen. Yeah.
But it was one of those things like we were talking about before, the random impromptu approach to creativity where you just sit down with maybe a couple of elements. Like I had the idea of an ear and a mouth. I don't even know if most people looking at the logo, I don't think I would realize
I
that it's
actually
an
got
ear
it
and a
out of
mouth.
there. Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
There's even like, you can see that it's like the mouse got like a text bubble. You know what I mean?
I stretched
That's
the
good.
mouth a little bit. So just
Hey,
playing with those two elements. And
it's a very solid first draft. And then,
Thank,
as the
thank you very
podcast
much.
gets more popular, we'll refine it and make it even cooler.
Yeah,
But
I
it's,
like it.
like out the box, you got it. So wait, you designed that yourself?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just one Saturday afternoon. Couple elements,
Right.
created the boundaries, like you said during the podcast, and worked within those boundaries to arrive at a logo.
Cool, man. Yeah. Well, I'd like one of the themes of this conversation to be that there's ways of, kind of outsmarting yourself and getting the creativity out, right?
Yeah.
I think if people go and listen to what we've talked about, they'll see that there are some techniques that you can use, to get yourself to be really creative. I think the biggest one is trying to overcome fears.
Yep.
Just everything's a rough cut. Everything's a work in progress. It doesn't have to be amazing. I think the number one thing that robs creativity is perfectionism, because you always want people to just be blown away. You want to make something amazing, but if you make something that's at least kind of good, that's better than nothing.
And people will take notice.
Yeah.
And it might not be perfect, but there's also a difference between quality and perfection.
Yeah. You get there. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got to look at everything as a work in progress until you come to the point where you release it, and get it out into the world.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we are talking about closing. So do you have any closing remarks before I let you go?
Well, I hope that everybody will go to arcadedocumentary.com and check out the project. I think that for people that, are creatives, like here's a chance to really follow along with a project that's got some amazing people on it and an incredible topic. And it's going to be, one of the biggest documentaries, about this stuff that you're going to come across. You know what I mean? Like, this is your chance to actually, kind of be involved with us and follow along before, we get our deal, because I absolutely know we have something that has a lot of value to it. And, if you're creative, like, there's a lot of stuff that you can learn and get inspired by, that we're doing. So please follow along, please back us, because you'll get, updates that nobody else sees. You get access to content that nobody else sees. And I'll be doing streams, by myself or with Amiga Bill, where, you get to go inside of our studios and see what we're working on. I think that people really like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it would really relate to a lot of what you talked about today.
Yeah,
and
man.
Your creative process, and then to be able to not only see that in the finished product that will eventually be released, but also, joining the Kickstarter and being able to see some of those steps along the way in an intimate way. I think that's really cool. Do you have a hard release on the first three that are, I think, committed to? Or a general time frame?
Yeah, we do. We're gonna go for like Q1 or Q2 of 2022.
2022.
We think that things should be at least in enough shape to get the Kickstarters there versions. It's our intent to release a lot of the merchandise. Of course, I want to remind everybody that a Kickstarter is not a donation. What you're actually doing is supporting the project and getting merchandise and other cool stuff. So like we're hoping to send out the merchandise before the series is finished. We intend to, and then like we think that we could have everything done, by Q2 of 2022, and in addition to producing the film all through next year, we're gonna be working on kind of our distribution plan. And that's really going to be a matter of like, who we can get in front of. Like my distributor that did Viva Amiga, they were okay. they got me a bigger release than I ever anticipated. But at the same time, we can see how they left money on the table. Now, first of all, everybody should realize that anybody making documentaries is not looking to get rich. We're just looking to cover our expenses and be able to live off this. So, I got enough off the first deal to make it worthwhile. It's not enough to live off, keeping it real. So,
Right.
We're going to be trying to get a deal that supports me as an artist, just making content about things that I like and I know that people will enjoy watching. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah. So not only do you get cool swag, and to say, people ask you, what is that shirt? What is this stuff that you have that I don't, that says Arcade Dream?
It's cool stuff,
all
dude. Like,
over
yeah,
it?
I mean, it's
You could
a good time to drop
you could
this.
be the first to arrive, right? You
Yo,
could say,
keeping
I'm
it real.
supporting this project.
Hey, we just hired the artist that did the poster for Ready Player One.
Whoa.
I
Mic
know.
drop.
Seriously. Yo, yeah, we hired
awesome.
that guy. We're going to have a killer poster. We also have, and just talk a little bit more about the merch. There's 4 limited edition posters that you can get. Yeah, one of them will be done by him. His name escapes me right now. Ready Player One guy. We've got another guy that's one of the biggest pinball machine illustrator artists, right? So
for the actual art in the machines.
For the actual art on the machines.
Cool.
And he's going to make us an awesome pinball themed poster, right? And so, I think Ready Player One will be kind of video. We've got the pinball themed posters, and there's 2 more, that are kind of in the works. But 4 limited edition posters. You got his crazy arcade token, which is, I found, like, I'm going to hold it up right now for everybody to look. Tokens are really cool. About 2 weeks ago, I found this token, okay? I didn't even know I had it. It's from the first arcade that I ever went to when I was about 5 or 6 years old. Yes. It's called the Sunday Bar. The token says Village Sunday Bar. All right. I didn't know I actually had this in my possession. I think it might have been in a box of stuff that my mom shipped me like 10 years ago. And I was like, okay, yeah, I got this old Transformers and like my childhood toys. Well, in there, I'm pretty sure it was this token.
And it fell out, and
like it just fell out, and like it actually wound up in a coin jar. And like we were gonna go to Coinstar and get rid of like a bunch of pennies and stuff. I was like, wait, this is a token. I was like, wait, this is a token for the first arcade I ever went to. And like, yeah, I mean, talk about nostalgia. Like I saw this
serendipity
token.
or something like that.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. I remember some of the first video games I ever played. One was called Fire Truck. It's this crazy video game by Atari where you're, going through this obstacle course and putting out fires or whatever. I was like, what the, like, wow, like I'm the guy to make this film, right? You know what I mean? Like I'm the guy to make this film because like I grew up and I lived in that world, and yeah, man.
That's awesome. And through the film, you're going to be, putting that coin into the hands and into the pockets of viewers so that they could relive their nostalgia. And I'm excited to
learn,
exactly put my foot into the nostalgia of the periods that I'm familiar with, and then to experience vicariously through your film the parts of the film and parts of the history that I am not familiar with, which I think is a lot of it. So
and I talk about this as a community-based film. Like we've got a lot of people from the arcade community that are backing us, that are working on it. You know what I mean? Like one of the points of this film is to give some love and put some excitement around the arcade industry, because look, we got to help save arcades. We do. Like this is a very scary time. And these are people that run, businesses. These are people that I would say, are what I would consider some of the best American, kind of, self-made people. They run their own businesses, like they create chains. They're people that make a difference. And so we got to support them right now because, they've been hit with just this mega bomb of COVID.
Right.
There's an end to it, but we think the series, is really gonna put a lot of eyes on arcades and maybe get people to go to arcades again that haven't been for a while or never even been to one.
Yeah. And I honestly, besides the barcades, I don't know anything about the current state of contemporary arcades or arcade machines. So, if nothing else, I'd be really excited to, you know, learn about that through your film. And I imagine that it'll compel me to go and experience it in real life. Right.
You got to, yeah, you just got to. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Zach, thank you so much for really wide-ranging and fun conversation. And I
Cool,
hope that
thanks.
you are always welcome back. I'm always happy to shoot the shit with you. Whether it's after the film's finished and you want to talk about it, or you want to talk about your next project, just reach out.
Sure.
And if not, I'll be reaching out to you because
Love it, man.
it was
Yeah,
a pleasure.
like, well, since you have an interest in film too, hey, I'm just going to throw it out there. Maybe there's, something that we can get you to work on.
Yeah,
And
that would be
yeah,
cool.
I mean, like, and it's not for free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're using the money that we get from Kickstarter to, to pay people, to work on this with us. So, yeah, like, I've never been so excited about anything I ever did in my life. This is going to be amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
All right.
on that note, thank you again for joining me, and
Yeah.
have a great night and good luck with the Kickstarter. Everybody go check them out.
Arcadedocumentary.com.
Ba-boom. You hung around, my fellow randoms. Welcome to the debriefing. That was a really fun episode of the podcast. Zach and I had we kind of got into the weeds in all of the best ways in terms of thinking about strategies and styles of editing. When you're mashing up videos together, sometimes it's hard to talk about. It becomes very abstract the way that you're dealing with image and sound, not just image, but a moving image. Movies, film, and sound, video, all of it together and mashing it up in a way that tells a story but is also intriguing and interesting. And he certainly has a lot of footage to sort through, so it was interesting and fun to pick his brain about the process and the project that he's working on, how he's going to bring this to fruition. It's very ambitious. In terms of the evaluation I do of my own performance, one thing I did coming into this episode, I showered, I did a little bit of a meditation and a little bit of reading just so that my mind was working in a efficient and articulate way. And I think that it helped. And that's something I hope to have time to do before all of my episodes to make sure that I'm up to snuff and really firing in the way that I want to be, to ask the right questions at the right time and coach the conversation along in a really efficient and interesting way, and give my guests the right questions they need to create really fun and interesting commentary. They really control the show. They are the stars. And I really appreciate any and everybody who has joined me, and who will join me in the future. So I think that's it for today. Thank you, listeners, for also participating in the conversation. If you have any questions, or you just want to say, hey, I'm pretty random too, this is what I'm doing, we'd love to hear about it. We'd love to hear about how you found the show. So holler at us on Instagram and Twitter. And until next time, enjoy your own random.